Motherland has arrived. Unfortunately, I am Superman of Doom. The people of the Motherland have come. Unfortunately, I am Superman of Doom. Chapter 48. Meng squatted slightly, and the strength of his legs covered with the exoskeleton was increasing every moment, and now he had reached a terrifying level. Trample. As soon as he moved, the strong wind swept away the fog in place, and the confused and rapid figure jumped towards the direction of the central city dozens of meters away. The fog where it passed was strongly dispersed all the way, leaving a strange inhuman movement track, and it was quickly submerged by the surging fog. Only the red pupils flickered dimly and brightly. A day of doom that belongs to the real world. It's approaching. 0054 Yimon and Tifa. Tianhe City, the central urban area. The fog lingered. Countless huge unknown creatures moved through the fog, some like vehicles, some like hills. The entire modern city was reduced to a purgatory on earth. And screams and fierce sounds sounded everywhere from time to time. A mansion residential area with a lot of land. More than a dozen military tanks and armed vehicles drove onto the city roads, slowly moving through the fog, pushing one vehicle after another. And from time to time firing bundles of shells and dense bullets, repelling the monsters in the fog with fierce fire. Click. Armed tanks and soldiers' vehicles stopped in front of a private house with iron bars and courtyards. Alert on the spot. A heavily armed local officer disembarked from the passenger seat of the vehicle. About 10 seconds later, 2 butlers came out of the private house and opened the iron door. Immediately afterwards, the door of the private residence opened, and a middle-aged man in a suit and white sideburns walked out under the escort of 2 bodyguards. You are the chairman of Dream Century Technology Industry, Mr. Dream. The local officer saluted and said in a deep voice, I am a colonel stationed in Tianhe City, specially to protect the safety of you and your family. Quote. When Mr. Meng heard this, he was visibly relieved and looked at the thick fog that lingered around him. That's great. With you here, we are relieved. Quote. The local officer bowed his head and said quickly, please clean up immediately and evacuate with us. Quote. Evacuate? Mr. Meng was stunned, and his face became solemn again. The situation, is it so serious? Quote. It's really not very optimistic. We are constantly evacuating survivors in the direction of the military base in the east of the city. And then arranging for human escorts to evacuate them outside the city. The local officers did not hide him. After all, it was a crisis in the whole city now, and even if they wanted to, they couldn't hide it. He urged, please prepare to evacuate as soon as possible. In addition to you, we will be responsible for evacuating many other survivors in the city. I see. Knowing that the situation was urgent, Mr. Meng couldn't help but quicken his pace and immediately returned to his private residence. Inside the dwelling, the middle-aged noblewoman who Ben was hiding in the basement walked out with the help of a young man. A white-collar woman and a black-haired girl also walked out. Honey, how's it going outside? The middle-aged noblewoman looked worriedly at Mr. Meng, who returned to the house with a solemn face. Mr. Meng glanced at everyone and said helplessly, the military is coming, let us evacuate, in the direction of the eastern military base, and then withdraw from the city with this. As soon as these words came out, everyone in the house was silent, and the need to evacuate the city was enough to see the seriousness of the situation. It shows that the military cannot fully deal with the inherent mysterious crisis of controlling the city now. Mr. Dream smiled and said steadily, let's go. Life matters, other cities also have our industry, it's a big deal to start from scratch. Quote. The middle-aged noble lady echoed, yes, let's just prepare, just bring important items, and leave all other heavy things. As soon as the words of the two came out, they were basically settled. Withdraw from the city with the army. But at this moment, a pleasant and determined girl's voice sounded, you guys evacuate to the east of the city, I'm going to the south of the city. On the field, everyone's faces changed suddenly, and they looked at the black-haired girl with puzzlement and solemnity. Miss Chen Hong was even more anxious to look at the black-haired girl on the side. She naturally knew that she heard that Meng was being isolated and detained in the south of the city. Just give me a car. Meng Tifa said unquestionably. She glanced at everyone on the field, and her clear and calm gaze finally fell on Mr. Meng. I see. Mr. Dream closed his eyes heavily, opened them again, took a bunch of car keys out of his pocket, and handed him over. The moment he handed over the car keys, he lowered his voice and said to the black-haired girl, thank you for your help 3 years ago. Quote. I should be thankful that you have given me a home in this world. Tifa smiled slightly, took the key, and walked directly into his pocket to the underground garage. Father, mother, it was very dangerous outside, how could she leave alone? The youth looked anxiously at his parents. Mr. Dream shook his head and said in a deep voice, you know. Once she makes a decision, she will never change her mind. Quote. The middle-aged noblewoman sighed and was extremely sorry. Sure enough, she will leave our house sooner or later. Quote. Abominable. Chen Hong stomped his foot, still chasing towards the girl's back. 5 minutes later, under the astonished gazes of a group of army soldiers, an off-road vehicle drove out of the underground garage of the private house and accelerated into the white fog and drove out. Next door, in another private house, Wang Xuan, who was preparing to evacuate with the army. He faintly saw the figure of a graceful girl sitting in the driver's seat of the off-road vehicle, and he was first stunned and then laughed maniacally. Crazy, she's really crazy. The buggy drove out of the private residential area, onto the uninhabited road, and retreated into a quiet white mist. Damn, this fog, it's so hard to see the road. Quote. Chen Hong in the driver's seat said while clutching the steering wheel. Fear made her body tremble, but she still had to concentrate on avoiding the cover. Tifa on the seat looked at her and sighed. Aunt Chen, in fact, you don't have to accompany me. Stop talking nonsense. Chen Hong gritted his teeth and said, I said before, the only thing I want in this life is to watch the eldest lady get happiness. The words are not finished. The off-road vehicle seemed to directly hit a mysterious living creature that emerged from the fog, and the window immediately burst into cracks, leaving bloodstains. Something. Chen Hong was stunned and subconsciously wanted to stop. Don't stop, keep going. Tifa directly inserted her slender white foot and stepped on the accelerator. The buggy continued to stagger out in the fog. Immediately afterwards, the rear of the car seemed to be scratched by something, leaving a shocking tearing scratch. Chen Hong was shocked and continued to drive the off-road vehicle forward. Another distance to the south of the city. Behind him, the reassuring sound of shells is constantly fading. The further south you go, the rarer the human tracks, and finally it seems that only 2 people in the car are left in the entire fog. Chen Hong began to gradually adapt to driving in the fog and constantly bypassing the bunker, but at this moment, the white fog of the city ahead seemed to be like an entity wrapped around the off-road vehicle that was slowly moving forward. That's spider silk. Tifa's beautiful eyes widened and reacted extremely quickly. Chen Hong was shocked, looked at the windshield with cracks, and sure enough, a large amount of white spider silk wrapped in the body. These white cobwebs, almost blending into the fog, make a perfect trap. Reverse quickly. Tifa reacted fast enough, but it was still a step late. The off-road vehicle was already deep in the cobweb, and black spiders the size of adult cats climbed along the silk onto the body. Spider silk and spiders, densely surrounding the off-road vehicle. Miss. It's all my fault. Seeing this, Chen Hong was shocked and regretted. Don't give up. We will definitely survive. Tifa said forcefully, reaching into her pocket as if to pull something out of it. But at this time, aberrations abounded. Boom. The surface is sunken, accompanied by the loud sound of some heavy object falling on the road next to the car. The adult cat-sized group of misty spiders was alarmed, and then receded like a tide, returning to the fog, as if afraid of some terrible existence. What happened? Chen Hong looked dazed. Tifa looked out the window of the car stunned, and it could be seen that in the fog, a figure was walking towards this side, and the silver light was shallowly flickering. Without the slightest hesitation, Tifa pressed the unlock button, her slender and tight legs bent and kicked violently, and the car door entangled in spider silk was violently kicked open. Miss. Under Chen Hong's shocked shouts and gazes, the black-haired girl hurriedly rushed out of the car, opened her hands, and threw herself into the arms of the figure in the fog. You found me. I knew you would come to me. First,